Welcome, everybody. This is Pastor J Mac, and we are here having conversation about Black youth, minority youth, mental health, and trauma-informed care. I'm blessed as we are in the month of July, which is recognized as Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, to have conversation about a very, very, very sensitive and very important topic. Many people are not having conversation about mental health and the ramifications it has on people in general. But especially, I want to pay close attention today to our young people. There's so much going on in our schools, in our homes, that is traumatizing our children, and they're having what is known as adverse childhood experiences. And so I wanted to talk with some people who deal with young people on the everyday basis. They're on the front lines trying to care for your people, trying to care for your young people, your child, your grandchild, showing them love, but also providing therapy. I want to be clear. I am a pastor. I fully believe in the power of prayer. I fully believe in God's love, but I also believe in treatment. I believe that God provides people in our lives to help us along the way, and that there are some conditions while you will still live with them, God will enable us to live with them together. And so I wanted to reach out to some people that I know believe in God, believe in loving people, but also believe in therapy and treatment and have seen success stories along the way. And so I have a few friends here today. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. I'm going to give the names, and in the order in which I introduce them, they are going to introduce themselves as far as what they do, their role, if they have a nonprofit organization and whatnot. We have Brother Aaron Knight. We have Sister or Dr. Amy Walker. We have Sister Marsha Granderson and Sister Tori White. Brother Aaron, would you please kick us off?
Good afternoon. Yes, my name is Aaron Knight. I'm the CEO of Progressive Community Outreach, which is a community-based program that works in the Petersburg area and the surrounding areas. We've been in existence for about 10 years. We provide therapeutic mentoring as well as parent education services. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Thanks for being here with us on today. Dr. Walker, could you elaborate on who you are and what you do?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Amy Walker, and I am a licensed psychologist. I live in Qatar in the Middle East. I'm also a therapist here where I work with adults and adolescents. I also have an independent private teletherapy practice where I work with adults and adolescents. I've been in therapy for about 19 years where I conduct counseling sessions, both individual and small group, as well as assessment and consultation. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for being here with us. Marsha Granderson, could you take us next, or could you elaborate on who you are?
Good afternoon. I am Marsha Granderson. I work for the school system, and I'm also a mental health professional specialized in children. I work in the community as a liaison to bridge the gap within the homes and the community to bring about change with our youth, and I'm very, very happy.
Ms. G, thank you. We're happy to have you. And last but not least, Sister Tori White, could you please elaborate on who you are and what you do?
Hi, my name is Tori White. Again, I am a licensed professional counselor. I worked in community mental health for over 20 years in various capacities. Most currently, I work for a local school system as a behavior specialist and a therapist.
Awesome, awesome. So I want to just ask a few questions just to get the ball rolling and get some conversation started. And I'll begin with you, Tori. And for those, if you're not speaking, feel free to mute your screen while another person is talking. But we want you to be engaged. So if you want to quickly jump in, you can leave it unmuted. But I wanted to ask, when you think of Black youth and mental health awareness, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
I would have to say the first thing that comes to mind with Black youth and mental health awareness is the stigma associated with Black people receiving mental health treatment. Also, the quality of services that we get in the Black community, all those things come to mind, as well as the lack of therapists or treatment the lack of therapists in the area that look like us. A lot of times with the kids that I work with, it's a trust issue when they go in and see a therapist, and the therapist pretty much doesn't look like us. So it always helps. But that stigma that's associated with Black people and people of color in general getting mental health treatment, that's something that we need to work on as a community at whole. We need to remove that stigma. A lot of times, and we've talked about this before, Pastor McLaughlin, that a lot of times our families decide to either, sweep it under the rug, or the kids' behaviors, or, taking the child to the pastor and pray. And while there's nothing wrong with prayer, I'm a believer in prayer, there's also nothing wrong with seeking treatment for our people. And so we kind of need to remove that stigma of people of color receiving and getting treatment for mental health problems.
Awesome. You said something that really stood out, but I'm gonna come back to it, and that's the importance of culture and cultural sensitivity and understanding. When we talk about people that don't look like us, while some feel like that shouldn't play a part, that shouldn't make a difference, I believe it makes a difference. There are some people that are phenomenal and can cross various boundaries or barriers as far as culturally, but many don't. And so that's important. The other thing that stood out, you didn't say this term, but it's a term I hear often, and that's treatment deserts, where there are not enough facilities or counselors in certain areas. And unfortunately, it's often in our urban communities, the places where we're flooded with so many other services. Mental health is not there. So thank you for that. Dr. Walker, I felt like you wanted to jump in so badly, so I'm gonna recognize you next. Did you have anything you wanted to add when it comes to Black youth and mental health awareness?
The only thing that I would add, because I definitely believe that the destigmatization is critical just within the whole Black community, whether it's adults or whether it's adolescents. But I also think what's missing is that we identify, recognize, acknowledge that the issues that our Black youth are facing are real. So they need a space where they can talk about these things and not feel judged, not feel that someone is misunderstanding them. And it's so critical, because although some people may be able to cross those boundaries that don't look like the client, a lot of our Black youth, just from my experience, want someone that sits across from them that looks like them, because they feel like they can connect. If for nothing else, being able to connect in the room, and then having that connection transcend just sitting in the room.
Awesome. And so I'm going to go on a limb here and talk about when you have somebody sitting in front of you. Some of you, in fact, Miss G and Tori, I've seen firsthand work hand in hand a lot with young Black males. Brother Aaron, I wanted to ask you your role as a Black male in mental health awareness. How important do you feel it is to be a Black male and to have more Black men present, providing treatment and therapy for our young people? And then also address the first question: when you think of Black youth and mental health awareness, what comes to mind? Did you hear the question, Aaron?
I'm sorry, was that for me?
Yeah, that question was for you.
I'm sorry, I get it. Okay, could you repeat it one more time? I'm getting something, a little pushback on my end.
Okay. The question was, so we talked about the importance, or Dr. Walker talked about the importance of seeing somebody that looks like you across the table when it comes to therapy, and that helping break down some barriers and the stigmatizing. And I was asking, as a Black male, how important do you feel it is to be present for those therapy sessions and provide therapy? Because often our LPCs, our QMHPCs are providing services for young Black males. And I could be wrong, but it's been my observation in many scenarios, they're receiving that treatment or service from either white women or Black women. And so I guess my question to you was, what is is there a great need for Black males to be present, and how effective is it as a Black male?
So definitely, I definitely feel as though it is beneficial. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of time, the nature of the work that I do, building rapport is essential. One of the quickest ways to build rapport with our adolescent males is just them feeling like they can relate. And then they'll be more transparent. When they see that, prime example, we see everything that's going on with the nation, with the Black Lives Matter movement, things like that. When we can identify on certain levels, say how the perception that the police have upon, or some law enforcement officials upon our initial contact, when they can identify that I can relate to those certain scenarios, in that case, the wall starts to slowly come down. Once the wall comes down, you know, you can get some of the true emotions that have been suppressed, because a lot of our males have been taught, you know, suck it up, just suck up the pain, just deal with it, just master the pain. And so they're going through significant levels of trauma, and they're just trying to suck it up. But again, once you develop that rapport, that wall starts to come down, and then you can get more in the therapeutic aspect, and you're actually sitting across from somebody who's receptive to what the information you're giving them, instead of just sitting there to buy time.
Awesome. And I feel like this is not belittling anyone else or saying that no one else cannot be involved or engaged in treatment, but just there is a need for Black males in this field. And I applaud the work that everyone on this panel has done, and so many others. But I do feel like there needs to be an appeal for Black males to consider this field. When you're considering jobs or careers, this is something that is needed. When you talk about ministry, this is ministry. This definitely is ministry to me. And so for those that are considering it, of course, bring your A game, because people's lives are at stake. But I definitely, I definitely feel like we should make an appeal for more people to take part, because statistics will show the number of cases of mental health issues or concerns are growing and growing rapidly. And the amount of centers is not growing, and the amount of LPCs or QMHPCs is not growing with it. And so we need more people to take part in this. And so with that said, until we get more licensed counselors and practitioners, we need community involvement. But one of the things community needs to know is all that's going on. So Ms. G, I wanted to ask you, first of all, what can families do when it becomes clear to them, or apparent, that a child is battling mental illness or has mental health concerns? What can a family do, and what can the community do to help our young people?
Well, I realize that a lot of times it is people say, oh, I wish I could do something to help these children. I wish. However, when the rubber meets the road and you see the severity of it, you be like, oh, I didn't know it was that serious. So first of all, we as mental health professionals first look at their environment, where they're living, because a lot of times not only is it the children, it's the parents as well. So helping families that suffered trauma, in order to try to help the children, you know, we have to get to that root, because about half of our children now do suffer some type of trauma. And with this pandemic that we're having, the numbers are steadily climbing. Alone being a community liaison, the domestic violence within the home. So when we talk about helping parents, we have to ensure that their environment is stable, so that we can prepare to help them to help their children, because we're experiencing right now, since the pandemic, kids have lost their parents. Kids have suffered. Parents have overdosed. All of this has just happened within the month. And there was no stability in the home. And grandma is 80 years old, doing the best she can with an 8 and a 9-year-old. So, and I know that's a lot, but in order to help the family, going back to your question, we have to understand the environment and just get all of the stakeholders that's involved to come in. And I know Miss White, I can read something that's going on there in her head, because you, as well as Dr. Walker. But the main thing is to make sure that we as mental health professionals do take that mental break ourselves to prepare, get our rest, our own self-care, in order to be able to help these youth. Because as stated, the environment in which they live in, it is real. It's real of the real. And being an essential worker, I'm still out here, masked up, of course, but the virtual and the telehealth is not working for my youth. I have to at least just pull up in the driveway, so because they need that. They need to be seen. They need to be heard.
Wow. You just said a lot. And one of the questions that may be raised by some people is, so what does a traumatic environment look like? You mentioned domestic violence. What are some other factors that could create a traumatic environment for young people?
Some kids being removed from their home because the parents were on drugs or things like that's trauma to them. The death of a loved one, automobile accidents, all types of things create violence. Just seeing the violence on TV, having to explain to them what's going on. You know, who is George Floyd? Why is the police on this man's neck? Just all kinds of stuff. They're exposed to so much at such a young age.
Wow. Yeah. And it's unfortunate. Anyone else would like to address traumatic environments or what can communities and families do for young people that have been traumatized?
Sure. You want to go? You want me to go first?
Go ahead, you can go.
Add to the different traumatic environments, because any event that a child is exposed to that is going to cause some type of long-term pain, some type of long-term emotional trauma is going to be really important for the clinician to be mindful of. So we're talking about anything from natural disasters. I'm thinking about the community violence in Chicago over the July 4th weekend. There were 12 shootings of minors, of which 2 succumbed to their injuries. And I think we have to be very, very mindful of how that impacts not only those who were affected by the violence, but those around them. So what did the children who are friends of those who were injured, what are they thinking? Now they have a sense of fear. Now their families have a higher sense of fear. I also think about sex trafficking. I think about the kidnapping numbers of Black children, how our numbers exceed those of the white children and anyone from another race. And we don't get the type of media coverage or police coverage to help find these children. So these traumatic events, again, they're not only affecting the child, but it affects everyone around them.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say that not only the experiences that children have, but the experiences that their loved ones have that they're exposed to. Even a parent being incarcerated, we were talking about adverse childhood experiences, seeing a parent that has mental health issues being detained by police for TDO. All those things can be traumatic for children. I've had children that were having a mental health crisis that had to be pre-screened in the hospital, and that by itself and in itself is a traumatic experience for a child. So just talking about those adverse childhood experiences, it's a lot of things that can affect a child and be a traumatic experience for them. And like Dr. Walker said, we need to be mindful of those things when we're treating the kids. We need to teach a lot of self-regulation. We need to, just teach them to be self-aware. And so, and that was one of the reasons why I chose to work in the school system, because of the fact that we have a lot of kids in the school system that have suffered traumatic experience. And when they're sitting in a classroom, it's hard for them to focus. And so the first thing the teacher does is email the parent and say, oh, he has ADHD or she has ADHD. And it's not ADHD at all. It's trauma. And so a lot of times when I'm in the classroom and I'm observing a child and I'm going through, records of what's been going on, I could tell the teacher, hey, concert is not going to work for this. We need to teach this child some self-regulation. We need to teach this child some coping skills to be able to deal with their thoughts when they come, those intrusive thoughts when they come. We need to teach them to be able to deal with, what's going on in their head that allows them or that pushes them to not be able to focus when they're in school. So, I mean, we have a lot of work to do. And like I said, that was the reason why I chose to work in the school, because we were seeing all these kids, especially our young Black boys, being diagnosed with ADHD. And that may not be it at all.
Yeah, I don't want to get on my soapbox about what I believe is misdiagnosis. I fully believe that behavioral, quote unquote, behavioral issues are often misdiagnosed as ADHD, and then these kids get hooked on drugs, and then you wonder why they're hooked on drugs later on. And then there's also a financial aspect of it, because certain people get money the more there's a diagnosis. So it's very problematic for me. I'm sorry, I feel like Aaron was about to say something, so go ahead, Aaron.
And Pastor Mac, I just wanted to piggyback and just add, I think one thing that we might have missed is just the trauma that is constantly shown through social media. When we see situations like the George Floyd, it's all up and down your timeline. You keep seeing it over and over and over again. And some people, of course, some of us are old enough to say, hey, let me detach from social media for a week or so, let this storm pass. But some of our young people, they might not have that skill set. So it's just a constant reminder. And then the community around them, everything is very emotional. People aren't using their God-given abilities to kind of think through these situations. So a lot of people are just moving from an emotional state, very induced by that. But I feel like social media is a big factor to that.
Absolutely. And one of the things that our generations didn't experience was cyberbullying. Now kids are getting hate messages on Snapchat or directly on Instagram. And at one time, as a teacher or mentor, you would see the kids picking on them, and so you could intervene and address it. But now it may be some stuff going on with your children, and you have no clue. And so social media, while it is great, it can be a tool for so many positive things. It can also cause a lot of challenges and a lot of problems. So thank you for lifting up the social media aspect of what's going on with our youth. So you mentioned schools, Sister White, Tori, and it's been my observation that one of the main facilities for treatment or where our young people get care is at schools. And so I wanted to ask you, Ms. G and others, why do you think the schools play such a role in mental health awareness for our young people?
I'll start.
Awesome.
I've done some consulting for my kids' school here. So there have been several families who have children who are dealing with either some type of trauma. Bullying here is as significant as it is in the States. And students have not been allowed to return to school until they've seen a therapist. Unfortunately, there are not many therapists here who specialize in working with children and adolescents. My specialty is not children. I work primarily with adolescents, about pre-adolescent, 11 or 12 and up to adults. Nevertheless, being able to take a child and sit with that child in a different setting, first and foremost in the school setting, if you can, because I've done some on-site counseling as well as go to the child's home and do therapy there. But I think that being able to have counselors in the school helps relieve the guidance counselor from his or her duties, because those duties look very different than perhaps an LPC, meaning The guidance counselor's primary duties may be to assess academic concerns or look at career and college admission packets, so on and so forth. So when you talk about providing a continuity of care for a mental health issue and perhaps a persistent mental health issue, I think that's where the value of adding some type of therapist, whether you're a counselor, an LPC, a psychologist, someone who specializes in that area, in the psychotherapeutic area, is valuable to being in the school.
Awesome.
And I just want to add, a lot of where I work is a very low income school district. And so I saw my kids having so many barriers to treatment, not having insurance, not having transportation to their sessions. A lot of them only came when it was court involvement. But, being in school, they come to school and a lot of times they have triggers in school. And so having a therapist right there to be able to process what's going on with them, to be able to help them calm down and self-regulate, then they could take those things home. They can take what they've learned at school, and when those triggers come at home, they can take those things home. But I will tell you, since I've been working in the schools, my rate of children being receptive to the services has increased dramatically. And I just feel that working in the schools, like I said, with the triggers that they face with their peers, with their teachers, I just feel that it's an effective way to receive the services for them. And a lot of our high school kids, they don't even have to ask permission. Otherwise, they would need permission. But the school district that I work in, luckily, we're going to have a clinic soon. And so they'll have an LCSW working at the school full time just to do therapy. And I'm really, really proud of that. And we have a few LPCs that work in the elementary schools and the middle schools. So there's a need. Talking about all the things that happen in the news with school shootings and everything. If we focused on mental health in the schools, I think it would help some to deal with some of those problems before they become problems.
Awesome. Miss G, you want to add anything? I'm coming to you next, Aaron.
Yeah, and a lot of times the school provides a safe haven. It's a safe place for the students. And as stated, currently our abuse cases, hunger, all of that is increased because the school was a safe place for them. So it's important that we still be proactive and be out in the community and check on our babies. I do from 5-year-old to 18-year-old. So I think it's a good thing that a lot of the TDT programs and things like that are available in the school. And as you stated, there are more now seeking help in that area.
Awesome. TDT, for those who don't know, therapeutic day treatments, correct?
Yes.
That's correct.
See, I'm learning myself. Aaron, did you want to add anything to that about the importance of treatment being in schools?
Sure, yeah. I definitely feel like it's important. Just because also with school, it's the melting pot. So if you have some kids that might display a stronger mental health need and in the same classroom with kids who might not, it could cause a disruption. And if it's not being addressed, it could also throw off other kids from the reason why they're in school. So I definitely feel like more intervention, especially therapists in the school, is needed and it's essential.
So I'm going to ask a question that I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to ask it anyway. In many communities like Petersburg, we have what is known as alternative schools. Mm-hmm. So those youth who are quote unquote disruptive, they are placed in another building so that they don't interrupt the learning of those children who may be considered more focused. Would you say we probably need a lot more attention focus in those alternative schools, or should it be equal across the board where everybody gets the same amount of treatment?
I think personally, everyone should get the same amount of treatment because problems vary in how they cause a disruption to others. So some people, it could be, I'll give myself for an example. I would joke and ask a lot of questions and things like that in the classroom that didn't necessarily mean I was a bad child, maybe attention seeking, but that could disrupt others. Then you have some kids who have more behavioral, emotional issues that could be a disruption. So I definitely feel if the resources are there, then it should be addressed across the board, whether it's alternative school placement or public school placement.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to disagree with Aaron. I think if you have equal treatment, then we wouldn't have to have all of these alternative schools, because the issue is sometimes our kids don't have access. So I think about my work with adolescents, and my favorite adolescents to work with are angry teens. And I mean, I want the most angriest of the angriest, because when you get down to that nitty gritty, you will find that at the root is typically a traumatic experience. So my work in a psychiatric hospital, to me, has been my most meaningful work, working with adolescents and creating an anger management curriculum for them. And when you get to understanding the root of their anger, they've been molested by their mom's boyfriends, or their parent was killed, or their parent committed suicide. And instead of talking to them, sending them to therapists, the school then kicks them out, puts them in out of school suspension, and then their parent signs them into a psychiatric hospital. That is not the trajectory of how you treat that. And I think had someone been at the school to be able to get to the child and try to get to the root of the problem, then we would be okay. But I think that equal access would decrease the need for as many alternative schools.
Wonderful perspective. So I just have a few more questions. And one is, so since we're talking about schools and being an environment where people can get treatment, what other environments or places in the community do you feel like need to have more LPCs, need to offer more treatment? For example, church. Do you feel like churches could be a place where people could feel comfortable coming to receive treatment? Rec centers, community centers, where people often gather for sports. Like, what other environments do you feel like could be beneficial to treatment? And do you think that the parents and young people will be receptive to?
Definitely, I feel that churches, it would be a wonderful thing for churches to start having therapists there. Community and rec centers, definitely. I think, a lot of times, like I said, we have so many barriers to treatment often in the Black community. And not only the barriers of treatment, but like we discussed earlier, the treatment deserts. And they're few and far between. And so we need to actually put more emphasis, I think, in putting these resources and having these resources available in a variety of different places throughout the Black community, so that we can start addressing some of the needs. Like I said, I think the families would be definitely receptive to it. In speaking with a lot of the parents, they want help for their children. They want their children to get help often. It's just that we have those barriers to treatment, and we don't have that many resources. I've worked with a variety of kids, of all different colors, and I feel like I have a good rapport with kids. And so, these parents, regardless of what color they are, they definitely want and seek out treatment often for their kids. But we just have all these barriers that are put up. Like I said, not having insurance. Not having any insurance. We have all these things that put up brick walls for our families. And we definitely need to look at that as a system and as a community as a whole.
Anyone else? I know, Aaron, your mentoring group meets off-site. I'm sorry, Dr. Walker, you were about to say something?
Go ahead. I'll follow up when you're finished. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask Aaron to elaborate, because he has a group that meets not in school. And so what are some other venues you feel could be beneficial as far as providing treatment and resources to our young people?
Honestly, we meet in the school, off-site, in the community. But one of the things, and I guess it goes along with the question, is I think law enforcement, it needs to be more therapy with law enforcement, because every child that meets first contact with law enforcement, it could be a deeper issue. It could be a traumatic issue. It could be a situation where it's mental health induced. And I know some of the places are being, how do I want to say it? They're more forefront thinking as far as training their officers so they can make determinations, or they can know when to call somebody from a clinical realm to intervene before, actually putting a sanction down. But I think that's necessary because, again, how are we impacting the trauma? That's the question I have. A lot of our kids, they know when they see police officers, whether they've done anything or not, they'll take off running.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of trauma that's been induced in these situations, and it's causing more division. So I think just having clinical oversight, more training amongst law enforcement, I think we would get better outcomes in the community.
Awesome. Wonderful perspective. Dr. Walker?
Now, I was going to mention that I have a dear friend, Dr. Tanya Tinsley, and she started a counseling center at Mount Arad Church in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
My good friend and frat brother, Billy Curtis.
Yeah,
Dr. William H. Curtis.
Exactly. Reverend Curtis. I watch him on Sundays, even from Qatar. But they have a full-blown counseling center at Mount Arad, and it services children, adolescents, and adults. So I think the work is being done. I think that there's certain models that you have to follow because, our people, even though they're in the church, they still don't want to seek those therapeutic services. So as long as the pastor is promoting that God wants you to talk to me, but he also wants you to go see your therapist, that's very, very important. I think another place where we should place therapists, because I really just believe in outreach. They may not come to us if we sit in an office behind closed doors, so we have to go to them. And I think that going into camps during the summer, there's so many summer camps, and they're doing all these activities. You don't have to have a session with children, but you can send a therapist in to do therapeutic activities with an entire group. You need to talk about being respectful. You need to talk about all these different types of characteristics, or how to deal with anger, how to deal with frustration, how to deal with bullying. So I think that we have to not only place therapists in different places, in different environments, but we also have to be creative in how we talk about these mental health issues. Use music, use art, find a way to connect. Because if you can't connect with the child, that session or that informational, whatever you're giving them, a workshop, seminar, is not going to be effective. You have to find a way to connect.
Absolutely. That relationship is so important. Definitely.
Awesome. And Ms. G, I see you everywhere with the young people. So did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, it's the whole thing is just, it's not a one size fit all. What issue one has, the other may not have, and we just have to be out there in the community, just visible, because as they stated, once you build a rapport, they'll tell their friends, and they'll tell their friends' friends. I guess that's why I'm blessed to be able to go into some of these neighborhoods when my kids don't show up for school, or when they're missing. It's all in that rapport. It's all, and it's not a one size fits all. Each one has their own special, unique situation. So.
Awesome. So just one last question, and that is, so we talked about therapeutic activities. Dr. Walker mentioned that. And so often places, they want to do the right thing, they just don't know what to do. Or people want to do the right thing, they just don't know what to do. And so rather than being re-traumatizing, what are some activities that parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, or even organizations like ministries, that youth ministries and whatnot, what are some activities that we can do just to boost morale that can help people that may be traumatized, or even before a person gets to traumatization, help them remain a sense of calm and peace that can help with their mental health? What are some activities that you all would recommend?
I'll tell you what I do with my babies. And when I mean babies, I mean kindergarten, pre-K, first grade, in the schools. And it's very easy and the kids love it. So a part of self-regulation is doing appropriate deep breathing. And what I find when I go in schools, and even in the classrooms, I've done it with a whole classroom with the teacher and everything, is we blow bubbles. Often we don't know how to breathe properly when we are having, if it's a trigger or, just a memory or anything, we don't know how to breathe properly. And so I teach them how to breathe using bubbles, and how the bubbles come out when you breathe inappropriate. And kids absolutely love that. And so that's just one of
All
my
kids love
techniques that I
bubbles.
use often. Even adults. Listen, I took them in middle school one day, and it was so funny because I was actually doing a professional development with teachers, and I hear all this commotion in the hallway, and I'm in the middle school, and I had my bubbles because I was talking to teachers about how to use the bubbles. Even middle school, high school kids love bubbles. And I was doing a professional development and heard all this commotion, and so it was two female students getting ready to get into a fight. And so the school counselor took one and I took the other, and we were in the library with my bubbles. And probably after 15 minutes, she calmed down, was able to self-regulate. We talked about it. And so when I saw the school counselor a few days later, she said, she asked if she could have some bubbles at school. So now I have an office full of bubbles. But that's just one technique that I use a lot with the kids, and everybody likes bubbles. So just wanted to share that because that seems to catch on with a lot of kids.
Wonderful.
In addition to the breathing, I think we can't underestimate the effect of exercise.
Right.
And you even have to use the word
I knew
exercise.
either you or Aaron was going to bring it up. I knew one of you two was going to bring it up. Dr. Walker is also a bodybuilder in her spare time. So I knew it was coming.
I'm telling you from experience.
Amen. I'm all with it. Yeah.
Just being able to move your body. So
Absolutely.
you don't have to exercise because that becomes daunting when you use that word. So just let them know we're going to go play basketball, or we're going to go for a walk, something simple as a walk. But movement of the body triggers movement of the mind and the brain. Amen. And before you know it, your 5-minute walk has now become 15 minutes. And that child has told you more than you could have ever expected. So don't underestimate the power of exercise.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anyone else? Any other activity that could be helpful?
I do mindfulness. Sometimes just sitting still, be quiet, recognize what's going on around you, incorporate your breaths, listen to your heart. Can you hear your own heart? Have you ever been so quiet and so deep in thought that you hear your own heartbeat? The little birds outside, listen. And it captures their attention. Like, you hear? Works for older people too. You never recognize what's going on until you're in a still, quiet place. So I use mindfulness exercise, role play activities. They love to pretend that they're the other person and not that person that has the behaviors. That's also a great way. But that physical exercise every evening. Even though it's been 85, 90 degrees, I have kids. Do I want to? No, it's hot. I've worked 75, but you'll see me every evening this week, Monday through Thursday, out on the track field, 90 degrees, but it whatever works. We're all in this together, that village, that community, and And that's what community is about. It's coming together. You know, the people at the corner store, the boys on the corner, it doesn't matter. You'd be surprised at the connections.
Awesome. Awesome. Brother Aaron, you have anything you want to add?
So I 100% agree with what everyone said. I know role play too here is big. And we tell kids, be transparent. Do it, handle this. We'll give them a situation and we'll tell them, you handle it how you think is best, and we'll give feedback based off the people who have observed the role play. Another thing is that's been beneficial for us is just kind of showing the kids something different in regards to, we've been taking them hiking out in Charlottesville. It's a little bit of a ride, but just being one with nature. The kids will gripe and complain, but when they get to the top of the mountain, they see the view. It's great. It's a great experience, and you can coach them through it. So you can use the therapeutic interventions as you're trying to climb the mountain. You know, talk about persistence, talk about obstacles you face in life and not giving up. So it's just a multitude of things that have been beneficial. But it's really, for us, it's about keeping the kids on their toes. Like, if we use the same strategies, then they get used to it. So we got to constantly open up our minds and brainstorm on different ways that we can intervene in these young adults' lives.
Awesome. Wonderful. Wonderful. You all gave some great suggestions. I fully believe exercise. We all know it's a known fact that exercise and healthy living physically also helps your mental state, as well as what you eat. I fully believe what you eat has an effect on mental health. Those processed foods are killer in so many ways. So while the McChicken may be $1, it is you're gonna pay for it later. And so many other things. What you watch, I believe what we listen to and what we watch on a frequent basis can affect our mental health. The old saints used to say, what you put in your spirit, all of that can affect your mental health. And so there's so many things we can do. So listening to positive music or listening to positive speech is so many things we can do. But I want to thank this panel for helping us on today, because they really blessed me and taught me some things, and I hope it blessed all of you who are watching. I want to give way, if there's anything else that anyone wanted to say, anything that we didn't address that you wanted to talk about or you felt needed to be said before we close. All right. If not, thank y'all for coming out. Appreciate you. Thank you, Dr. Amy Walker. Thank you, Brother Aaron Knight. Thank you, Ms. Marsha Granderson. And thank you, Sister Tori White. I appreciate you all. I love you all for being on here. Thank you all. And I love what you all do for the community. It's so needed for our young people, for our families. And I believe we all are going to be better because of people like you. Thank you for tuning in. God bless you. Good night.
God bless.
Thank you, Pastor.